Welcome to this Marketing Virtual Roundtable, social media mini masterclass planning for 2022. Thank you, Phil. Phil is going to be our speaker today. And well, just to remind you, this is an open discussion. So if you want to have your thoughts, you want to give your thoughts, or you want to make any question, just feel free.
Thank you, Susanna. Thank you very much. Thank you. Hello, everybody. Yes, as Susanna said, my name is Phil Burse. I'll be taking the session today. I just wanted to ask a quick favor. If you have video and you want to share your video, I'd love to see your lovely faces. It is really, really interesting staring into the black void. As lovely as Susanna's faces, I'd like to see some more faces. So if you do have video, it would be great. If you don't have video, or as Susanna says, you know, you've got backgrounds or kids or dogs, I completely get that. But would you mind just changing your name on Zoom so I know your name and perhaps what company or organization you work for? So sort of Susanna Jane shortlist in brackets or something like that. I think you just sort of right click above your image on the three little dots and go to rename at the bottom. It just helps me understand what organization or company you're from. So for example, ChargePoint Technologies, thank you very much, Susanna. I now get the impression, I'm hoping that that is a private entity or a private business. So again, I can kind of shift and start thinking about how I might do some of the content slightly different depending on who is in the room. I'll leave that to you guys to do for the next couple of minutes if you don't mind. Hello, Susanna, very nice to see you. I'm going to talk today for about 30 minutes. I might stretch it out to 45 minutes depending on how we go, if there's any questions, etc. As Susanna says, I've kind of done this session 100 times over the last 10 years, and it's always best when there is interaction and questions. I'd rather I was answering your questions about your business or your organization than me waffling on for 45 minutes about how wonderful I am and about the sort of the more academic side of social media. So if you've got practical questions, please raise your hand, please say something in the chat, or just shout out, Phil, stop talking, I need to ask my question. Either way is absolutely fine with me. I'm going to share my screen. I'm going to start off with no more than a 30-second introduction into me. So my name is Phil Burse. I'm based up near Liverpool on the Wirral, if anyone knows the Wirral. I've been in marketing about 15 years. I ran my own digital creative agency for 8 of those years, which I sold earlier this year. I'm now an independent digital growth consultant, very fancy name. I basically work with companies and organizations who are looking to grow online. So a typical engagement might be a couple of days a week acting as a chief marketing officer, or maybe acting as a consultant to the chief exec, working with them on their growth plans that normally center and revolve around digital marketing. I've been training on social media for about, I'm trying to work this out now, about 7-8 years now, which in the social media world is absolutely huge, because that's about half the lifespan of social media itself. So hopefully I've got some insight that you'll be able to use and you'll get some value from during the session. I've been on both sides of the fence. So I've been a client, I've been client side, your side, running a marketing team for a couple of organizations, as well as being agency side, providing social media consultancy and practical implementation for and on behalf of you, the clients, the customers. Not surprisingly, I'm on all the social media channels, and if you want to email me, I'll send a copy of these slides over to Susanna later, and my email is on the bottom there. Right. Oops. What is social media? I don't want to bore you with this, but I want to spend a couple of minutes just making sure we're all on the same wavelength, the same page, because I think it's really important that we understand why we're talking about social media. Maybe even more importantly, if you and your organization should even be on social media. That's potentially a contentious debate, and we can discuss that later on if that comes up. What I want us to do is to understand what social media is first and foremost. I'm going to do it through 2 analogies and a couple of debunking myths. So analogy number 1, I firmly believe that the way to think about social media is in the context of the campfire. So my family gathers most Wednesday nights. We have the 4 kids and some grandkids, and we all kind of meet. It's an open house on a Wednesday night. And generally speaking, we're having some dinner, we're having some drink, but we are discussing, we're debating, we are putting the world to rights, we are telling about telling about how the grandkids have done X, Y, and Z, or the problems with our house, or the problems at work. We're sharing ideas. And I think that social media in its kind of real kind of base form is a place to share ideas. It's a place to chat, a place to meet people, to present how we've done in the day, to ask questions, to do 101 different things, but it's a community. It's an online community. So that's the first analogy I want you to have in your head. The second analogy, which is something probably that's come out in the last sort of more 5 to 10 years, is that of the production suite, the BBC production suite, as we've got here on the screen. Social media is very much a place now where we need to be creating really, really powerful and relevant content, interesting content, provocative content, funny content. And although I'm not suggesting for a second you need to invest in a £2 million production suite for you and your business, I do think you need to understand things like new media, podcasting, videos, animations, GIFs. I think you need to understand the world that people who consume social media are in, but fundamentally be open and excited about exploring how you might create content different than just the written form. So that's the two analogies, the campfire and the production studio. Finally, what is social media? Well, let's look at what social media isn't as a way of answering that question. The 4 myths of social media, as I hear so many, or I have heard so many times over the last 10 to 12 years. Social media is not the solution for a bad product or a bad company. It will only exacerbate any negative perception your business may have. So don't think of it as a way to get your positive message out there. Because the problem is with social media is that people can respond, they can comment, they can engage, they can actually tell you whether they agree with your statements. So long gone are the days where we could release a press release saying how wonderful we were, how well we'd done, and there was no way for your customers or prospective customers to be able to comment and challenge your statements. Number 2, it will not lead to overnight sales success. Emphasis on the word overnight. I do think social media has a place in the sales cycle, and it has a place in building a revenue pipeline for lots of different types of organizations, but it's not overnight, it's not instant. And one of the biggest criticisms, I think, of social media by people that perhaps don't understand what it's for is I assumed I was going to access millions and millions of people instantly and in return get revenue, leads, sales overnight. Social media takes time. It's like any relationship. It's like any community. You take time, you build those relationships through trust, through experience, and through sharing of content ideas. Number 3, it's simple. I use it every day. I get lots of chief execs saying to me, well, I'm on the LinkedIn, Phil. I'm on the Facebook. And by the way, you're allowed to say the LinkedIn if you have children, because I have children, so I can say the LinkedIn now, or the Facebook. It is really simple to use as an individual. The platforms are designed to be simple. They're designed to be easy to use. They're designed to be user-friendly. So they are simple to use as an individual. However, to create meaningful content and to reach your audience as an organization or as a business, it's more complicated. There's more you can do. And finally, number 4, it's free. Absolutely free as a bird. Well, it is free. You can register your profile free, which again is taking it from the individual side. It's free to use. But as with any endeavor in sales and marketing, there is a cost in terms of time and potentially a cost in terms of advertising spend. Lots of these platforms now are pay to play. You need to invest in ad spend in order to reach your target audience. So that's my social media myths. That's my initial kind of context of what social media is. So let's move on. The first thing we do before we jump into any meaningful campaign planning is understand why we're on social media, who it is we're targeting, and what they want from us, what they need from us. That's the key question. That's the first question we need to understand. Who wants what from us, and how can we help them? And fundamentally, what we're trying to do is to understand our customer, understand their challenges, understand their needs, and then see if we can be that mentor, that guide, that go-to person or organization that can help solve those needs. Now, I mention that because that is actually the goal of marketing in general. So in the role that Susanna does, and forgive me, the role that many of you might do here today, marketing is about understanding our customers. It's about understanding what they need and creating solutions to those needs. Fundamentally, social media is one part of the wider marketing mix. So some people will have a core proposition built around getting the message out there. Other people and organizations might have a core proposition built around engaging with people. They have to engage with people to do what they do, more service-based companies. But either way, irrelevant of how you kind of go about your delivering your how, you need to get your message out there. Social media is one channel, one route of the overall marketing mix. It's a slightly different channel because you can talk and communicate both ways, which we talked about before. But fundamentally, we have to understand where it fits in. To do that, we need to ask ourselves some questions. These are the questions that I get asked the most when people engage with me to create a social media strategy. They're saying things like, where do I start? Which platforms are right? How much should I spend on ads? What type of content should I do? Should I even bother with social media? That's the number one question, especially from chief execs and people on the leadership team. Why am I investing, Phil? Why all this Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter type stuff? My response is always the same. There's always reasons for being on social media platforms. Some are more relevant, some are more clear-cut for certain types of organizations. So for e-commerce businesses, generally it's a good thing because you can kind of target your customers, usually target your customers and usually sort of direct them through to your website and kind of measure the success of the campaign a bit more effectively, a bit more kind of visibly. For B2B service-based organizations, it's slightly different. It's more about brand building and kind of creating a place, a safe space where people can engage with your content, making sure that you become first of mind. There's also there's a plethora of different things that social media can do. You know, social media is good as a customer listening tool. It's a good place to uncover nuggets of information about your prospective customers, about what they're saying, thinking, asking, which can inform your content, it can inform your marketing, and it can inform your social media strategy. I think above everything, above all these reasons, social media is a place to build a richer customer experience. And it's a place where you can engage with your customers in a very tangible way that you can't really get unless you've got some sort of retail physical environment. So first action point for today. This is my number one thing I think you should do to get your strategy on track for next year. You need to use what I call the golden pyramid. 5 questions that will help you create a really effective social media campaign. And you start from the bottom. So first question, who are my audience? Well, if you work in marketing, I assume you have all or part of that answer. So I'm looking for, this is my demographic, these are my customers, these are their needs, you know, basic understanding of who your customers are. Then I want you to go into their challenges, like we talked about before. What are they struggling with? What are their reasons why our product or solution might be able to help? And then the third level, can I help them? What I mean by that is, can we provide content that's going to solve their problem, go close to solving their problem, get them on the way to solving the problem, make them feel more relaxed or safer that the problem has a solution? And then number 4, why should they care about me? This is all about credibility and social proof and about the quality of content that we're actually putting out there. You know, are we focused on them, the customer, as opposed to us, the organization? Can we help? Can we say something? And social media is about saying something. It's not just about listening, it's about saying something. You have to lead the conversation as much as you are listening and being part of wider conversations. And then the final question is, how do I reach them? If you can answer yes, 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 or yes, 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 credibility, then you should say, well, how can I get my message, my content out there? The reason why this is really, really important place to start is if you don't, I find lots of less educated members of the organization, potentially on the leadership team, generally start with question number 5 at the top. They just start with, which channel should we use? So I recommend you do that with the leaders of the business to say, let's make sure we've got something to say first. And it's interesting and it's relevant and it's going to inspire engagement. So let's assume you've done the golden pyramid exercise. We understand we have an audience. We know we've got something of value to share with them. And we've now looked at the channels we need to explore. What I can't do today is go channel by channel, A, because it's a little bit boring, and B, because it takes about an hour to go through all the channels, all the benefits. But let's just assume you've picked a couple of channels, let's say LinkedIn and Twitter. What's the core campaign? So this is the campaign that we use with our clients. So me as in with my clients now, and me with my previous agency, Elephant Digital, over an 8-year period. This was the foundation of every single social media campaign without fail. And it follows a really, really clear 4-step structure. You have to do these in a linear fashion in order to get this right. I say linear as in you have to do them all at the same time, but you have to start with the first one, if that makes sense. So number 1, step 1 of the first of the 4-step campaign is content. This may sound strange, but getting your content right is absolutely key. I'm being a little bit flippant. Obviously, content's important. The number 1 question you need to ask when you look back over the last 6 months of your social media content is it boring? Is it boring? Is it content that you would read if you were in the position of your customer? Is it inspirational? Is it changing the world? Is it deep? Is it provocative? Or is it just, pictures of you and the team eating donuts at lunchtime on your charity day? As wonderful as that is, I'm sure you had a great day. Me, my favorite person, me, said Seth Godin. And people watching and listening to your social accounts, they don't want to hear about you. Is it providing a solution or is it entertaining them? Yeah, it doesn't always have to be educational. It can be entertainment. And maybe the donuts is funny. Forgive me, I use that as a terrible example. But try and balance your kind of in the moment content with your more evergreen content. So the best thing I like to do is to combine your social media strategy with your blog and wider content creation strategy and be directing people through from ideally 2, 3, 4 blogs a month, well-written, deep research blogs that are providing value from your social media feeds. It's a very common plan, a very common strategy for especially B2B companies, but for every company they can do that. That's the foundation. And what ideally we're looking for is this evergreen content. Evergreen content that will last, that will stand the test of time. Yes, it might need to be updated every couple of years for new technologies, new whatever it might be, but generally what we're looking for is reviews, how-to guides, instructional videos, top 10s, things that people can go, that would be useful to me now and in 18 months' time if I don't get to read it today. You want them to bookmark it. You want them to save it. You want them to make a point of saying to themselves, I've got to come back to the shortlist LinkedIn account because it's littered with useful information. Little plug for you there, Susanna. The key to content for 2022 really is rich media. It really is. Wherever possible, include video, include an audio, include a GIF, include anything to get people to sort of take attention of the content. I think there's a thing called pattern disruption, which is about when you look at sort of 100 things in a row. Let's say in Tesco, you sort of go, you're looking down the aisle. What they're looking to do with the product design is to break your pattern. It's to break your way of thinking by sort of saying milk, 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 not milk for some reason. So just think about that as well. Just make sure your content also stands out. Make sure it's got a good title or it's got some sort of provocative or interesting or exciting title, the top 10 tips or how to smash your goals in 2022. Believe you me, it is cheesy, but actually it does work. So have a little think about that. So content curation, so taking other people's content is great. Content creation, I think, should be the goal. And I think a blend of the two, probably when you're starting out, is probably going to be the way you're going to go about it. But wherever possible, unique content is key. So that's step 1. Step number 2, once you've got your content, you need to engage with people on social media. And people will be thinking, Isn't this obvious, Phil? And I say it because it's obvious. I say it to remind you, because I know you know this. I know you're doing this every day as an individual. Now I want you to do it as an organization. So there are 3 types of engagements on every platform. Pretty much is pretty much the same. You get engagement from delivering great content. Great content, I accept, is completely subjective, and you need to trial it, and you need to refine it, and you need to find out what works for your audience. But the better the content, the better the engagement, the more likely they are to share, the more likely they are to pass it on to a friend, the more likely they are to say, I want to be seen to be aligned with Shortlist because their content is so good, it makes me look good being aligned to their content. Number 2 is what we call proactive interactions. So if you are the social media manager for your organization, I want you to spend half an hour every day liking other people's content, commenting on other people's content, engaging with other people's content, not yours. You don't walk into a date or a meeting with a friend or a family dinner and just say, everyone stop, I'm going to talk for the first half an hour. I mean, I do, but I'm an egocentric maniac. So that's slightly different. It just doesn't happen in the real world. So why do we insist on doing this on social media? Go in and ask a question. Go in and comment on how lovely someone's appearance is, or how nice how great their content is, or whatever you would normally do. Engage, be proactive, be positive, and pay it forward. Yeah. That will start conversations. It will make you look like a nice person. And when I say a nice person, I do mean a nice organization. Always look for win-wins. So when you're praising people, they're going to praise you back. They're going to thank you. Susanna, that was a great article the other day on LinkedIn. Thank you for sharing. I really appreciated your time and effort putting that content together. Oh, thank you, Phil. I really appreciate your comments about my article. We're going to go back and forth. The reason why we do this, because me and Susanna know something that is probably less known, is that the algorithm that powers these social media platforms demands engagement. It demands engagement. Because let's think about it. What they want to do is keep you on the platform. So if you're producing content that's making other people like and engage with it, the algorithm behind these platforms is going to say, well, let's push Susanna's content a bit more. Let's push it out a little bit. Let's give her a bit of a boost because she's getting good organic engagement anyway. So that's why we do it. That's why we look for these win-wins.
I have a question, Phil.
Go for it.
What about the engagement with the competence?
Competitors, Susanna?
Yeah, competitors.
I'm joking.
Did you engage with them?
I do, yeah. I do frequently. Because I don't see them as competitors. I see it as, especially in the marketing world, I accept we're slightly a bit more out there. A guy that 2 or 3 agency owners that I know and love deeply are good friends of mine. And I always share when they've got jobs. I always share. I did one yesterday. I always share, I always post, always have done. Because as long as I'm not hiring that person right then in the moment, I know that people are going to go to my company for different reasons as they're going to go to another company. And I want to be seen as helping my community, as building the overall marketing community or the overall recruitment community. And it comes from the theory of agglomeration. I love a big word. Agglomeration. It's why all shops go to like one place. It's why you have a shopping center. It's the theory of agglomeration. As in, if we're all there, people will come to the place where we are. And I feel that if you are building the brand of recruitment, you're building the recruitment sector or building the marketing sector or the IT sector in recruitment or whatever it might be, I think you're helping them, but you're helping you. Mm-hmm. And fundamentally, it's for you to make that call, Susanna. Sometimes it's appropriate. Sometimes it perhaps isn't. If they're saying, oh, we've just won this award as the best agency in the Northwest, and you're going, hold on a minute, we're the only other agency in the Northwest. Probably best I don't share that to my network. So I think pick and choose your moments, but generally you'll get engagement back from the right people. So I would do it for that reason.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree with you. Just I had a few discussions with some friends, and some of them were like, well, I don't know what to do about that. And then it's a question that I wanted to ask you. Thank you very much.
My pleasure. It's a great question without an easy answer. So thank you, Susanna. Don't be afraid. Final point on engagement. Don't be afraid to ask questions. Try to make them interesting questions. Try not to make it about, you know, should I have a ham sandwich or a cheese sandwich for lunch? And I really don't like them. I prefer it to be deeper, more meaningful questions. And again, they are a little bit cliched. They're a little bit, you know, cheesy, but they do work. What I would prefer to do is you ask questions that matter to your audience, that matter to your customers. Ask them about which products they prefer. Ask them about the most correct method of doing X, Y, and Z. Ask them anything that's going to be of interest to them, that makes them look good, you know. Whatever you do, try not to say, do you prefer my product A or my product B? That's never going to get any engagement. It's just never going to do anything. The number one rule with social media, and particularly engagement, is to make other people look good, not you. Stop bragging and say how wonderful Susanna at ChargePoint Technology is. That's the key. You in general, Susanna, but obviously specifically for this example, the content that I'm sure you're doing at ChargePoint. So that's number two. That's step 2 of our 4 steps. The third step, and this is a new step that I added in the last 2 years, you need to work, and it ties in very closely with step 2, to be fair. You need to try and work with influencers. You need to think about how can we engage influencers in our space. And everyone gets very scared by influencers. They all think it's to do with health and beauty, and it's the Kardashians advertising lipstick and makeup and clothes, and it really, really isn't. Yes, the fashion industry is where it started, and yes, the fashion and wellbeing industry is probably the forefront of influencer marketing. But actually, there's lots you can do on a very micro level. So, for example, to go back to your competitor question, Susanna, I know one of my competitors, a guy called Andy Kent, who's got an agency in Liverpool. He's got a huge following, and he's far better known than I am. I love engaging with him, saying, Andy, would you do me a favor and share that post for me, mate? I happen to be friends with him, but he's still an influencer in my space. Whenever he does it, I always get better engagement. That's using influencers, people who've got a bigger influence than you or your organization. The next step from there is to reach out to people. Reach out to people who have a network. And this is where it sort of crosses over with what's called, I would call content networking. So there's content marketing and content networking. What I always did when I ran my social media, and I do it slightly less these days because I'm kind of more independent, I would interview people for my podcast. So I had a podcast for like 4 or 5 years, and I would interview them. So I'd send them an email saying, I'd love to hear about your wonderfulness, Susanna. Tell me all about ChargePoint. I want to hear about how wonderful ChargePoint is. Susanna is obviously flattered, a little bit nervous about being on podcast, but, you know, she said, well, I'd quite like to promote ChargePoint, so I'm going to go on the podcast. So we'd have a Zoom call, we'd have a face-to-face, we'd record it. We've got content we can use. Then I'm going to post that content. Susanna's going to like the content because she's involved in it. ChargePoint's going to like the content. And suddenly I've got access to Susanna's network and ChargePoint's network. Yeah. So that's one example of how you can kind of use this kind of content networking idea to reach out, to connect with people in a really meaningful way. Even if the podcast gets no listens, which probably mine never did, that's not the point. The point is you're making connections with people in the real virtual world and working in collaboration to build your social media bases, your social media kind of reach. The level up from there is you can go to an influencer agency, or you can reach out to influencers in your space and ask them if they'll do something, if they'll do a collaboration, if they'll review your product, if they'll do a paid promotion, if they've got, I don't know, make up the numbers. If you're a craft company and you've got an influencer who's got 50,000 followers and you're thinking, well, look, can I give you a couple £100 to review my product or to review my service and post it to your network? Most people, you'd be surprised, but most people, they say yes. Influencers are, there's a real 2 levels. There's the Kardashian level, and then there's everybody else down here. There isn't this middle ground that's been developing in all of the sectors over the last 100 years. Influencers are very, very new. And I work with a fashion brand in Liverpool who spend about £1,000 a month on influencers, and they can get 5, 10, 15, 20, 30, 40 posts a month for that budget. Because they use what's called micro influencers, so anybody kind of upwards of 10,000 followers. Chances are they normally do it for just the product, or for the product and £100, or the product's £100 and a discount off the next 5 things you buy. You don't need huge budgets to make influencers work. And the final point, top level, you can go to a full influencer agency and say, look, what can we get for £1,000 a month or for a £10,000 project? Who can we reach? Who can advocate for us? You know, who can speak about our product and service? And yeah, it might be Nicki Minaj up there, but it might just be a really, really good local or regional influencer who you've probably never heard of, but that's got reach and that can access a market that you can't get to. I think that's social media, because you're going to do all of this on the social media platforms. Does that make sense? Yeah. The final point, step number 4, is then you grow the reach. So some people start off with an obsession with numbers, with followers, with connections on LinkedIn, with the number of followers on Twitter, for example. And there is a vanity element. I accept that. You know, on Instagram, if you've got 10,000 followers, you're seen as a professional account. You're seen as a credible source of information, content, and influence. But I wouldn't focus on growth until you've got the first 3 right. So you've got your content right, your engagement right, and you've got your influencers set up and sort of on a schedule. If there's kind of 2 ways to grow your reach. There's the more deliberate, inorganic way, which you can buy followers. Let's be frank, you can buy followers. I would never advocate it. It's pointless in my opinion, and it just doesn't get you anything. But if you do great content, if you do proper engagement, proper community management, build a group of influencers who are going to contribute regularly to your product or your service, you can combine that with a little follow campaign. So you might follow 100 people a month on Twitter or Instagram, hoping to get about 50% of them following you back. It does work. With ads, so you target people perhaps who either have looked at your page, who perhaps have bought from you in the past, who perhaps have been to your website but haven't converted, sort of remarketing. Combining all those things together, if you do them in the right order, you will grow your following organically. You don't need to do anything too aggressive. That's how you grow your following. The only reason to grow your following is because you've got the foundations right and you know that people like what you've got to say. You will never grow your following, and there'll be no point in doing it if you've not got something to say. That's the most important thing. You must have something to say. Any questions so far?
I have a question. Maybe you'll talk about it a bit later. But so all these steps you went through at the moment, I'm having quite a hard time to understand how I could be making it for a charge point, because we are quite of a specialist company. We just focus on like pharmaceutical manufacturing. So on our website, it is boring. It is not something what you would, as a normal person, would go and have a read. It's probably a read to make you go to sleep if you can't. That's kind of a content there. But our whoever's visiting the website, that's what they are looking for. They are looking for that kind of information. So I was trying to think of like a content, how we can make it more engaging. So I'm trying to try to get those buzzwords in, like, oh, do you know how to do this, or have you seen this specialist talking about this? But we've been growing the reach. However, we have Twitter and LinkedIn at the moment, but with Twitter, we are not very successful. It's not the main channel for us. But at the moment, my senior management asked me to make like a presentation of why we should keep a Twitter. And I was saying that it's a brand awareness. It's all those things you've mentioned at one of the first slides you showed. It's the reasons, like brand awareness, attract new customers, etc. So that's what I was saying, but they can't really understand that. Why do we need to keep it? What would you say? Would you recommend, even though we don't have like a lot of likes and reshares there, we don't have a lot of engagement on Twitter, but we are just keeping it just for the presence of it, would you say that's something good, or what would you say, what would you recommend?
That's a really interesting question, Susanna, and it's it's a question loaded in so many different ways.
Sorry.
it's kind of partly it moves to kind of your role and to your responsibility and the viability of the marketing function in general. So forgive me if I kind of skirt around some of the answer. I think fundamentally every business or organization should look at its marketing mix, which channels it needs to be on. To do that, you need to understand the customer, and you need to understand the customer journey from not knowing you to liking, trusting, and buying from you. And the fundamental question for social media is, does the content you push out to social media help your prospective customers become customers? Does it contribute? Either, forgive me, it's a rhetoric question for this point, Susanna, but either directly or indirectly, does it contribute?
Mm-hmm.
If it does, then it's okay, great. And I appreciate that answer is more of a retrospective answer. So it's like, is it currently contributing? If yes, carry on. If no, maybe don't carry on.
Mm-hmm.
So
I post the same message on LinkedIn as well as on Twitter. On LinkedIn, we get loads of engagement. Like for us, 10 likes is loads of engagement at this point. But on Twitter, sometimes it gets reshared, most likely not. So it's the same message on 2 different channels, whereas on LinkedIn, we know that our customers are there. But on Twitter, it's just not, it's just for the brand awareness.
Yeah. And I think, are you in a marketing role at ChargePoint, Susanna?
Yeah, I'm a digital marketing executive, yes.
Cool. I think fundamentally, it's a question that only you can ask, and probably I'm just going to get your website up here. It's probably a question only you can
Putting
ask.
on the spot there.
A little bit of promo there for you, Susanna. You know, LinkedIn and Twitter does have a different audience. It has a slightly different, purpose for being. And again, we can't go into the detail around that today. And I normally do a full afternoon seminar on social media as part of my digital leaders program that Susanna Chain's on, actually. And in that, we go into a lot of depth around, should you be on social media in the first place? We go into a lot of depth around, how do you understand what the customer wants? Then we go into the kind of what channel helps us get that message across.
Mm-hmm.
And then what content do we need to, produce in that channel? But it's more difficult when you are B2B, or when you're service driven, or when you're kind of when you've got a supply chain, if you're not selling direct to the end consumer. Forgive me, I don't know your exact model. It is more difficult. And my question to the board would be, is my time better served doing social media and content than it is elsewhere, or doing something different?
Mm-hmm.
And that's basically it. Does it contribute to the sales cycle? Does it contribute to retaining suppliers or distributors, whatever your model is? Does it contribute? If it does contribute, how much does it contribute? And is it worth how much of my time is it worth doing? Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I think you've answered my question.
It's an incredibly difficult question without going into the detail, but I really appreciate the question. Okay, let me wrap up with a few things, because I think there are 101 different things we could look at. Let me just, I just want to give you a couple of advanced thoughts, because I think these are interesting for a different way. So the 2 kind of advanced tips that I always give at the end of these talks are subject to you having got the basics right. But you can also use them in your thinking when you're doing the basics. So I hope these kind of make sense for everybody, whatever stage of the journey you're at with social media. So the first one is my golden rule. Above everything else in social media, this is kind of the golden rule to follow in terms of creating content. The 70-10-10-10 rule. When you're creating your content, let's assume you're doing 10 posts a week. 70% of those posts, so 7 out of 10, should be focused on adding value and providing remarkable content that solves the needs of your customers. Yeah? Evergreen, rich, deep, interesting, original content that's helping the customer in some way, or the prospective customer. 10% of your content, so 1 out of 10 in this instance, should be focused on you, the company, but not what you sell. So a little bit about you behind the scenes, getting to know us. What are our values? What do we stand for? What's our position on things? Softly, softly, softly type stuff. 10% should be what's called newsjacking. So jumping on the latest trends, Daniel Craig wearing a papoose, whatever weird and wonderful things happening in that day. Jump on it, absolutely. And obviously far more prevalent on Twitter, which is largely about newsjacking. The final 10%, one post a week in this instance. Go for your life. Sell, sell, sell. Promote, promote, promote. Offer, offer, offer. Discount, discount, discounts. Get them into the sales cycle. Put them through the sales engine. Whatever you can do to get that sale over the line. The reason why we created, or this 70-10-10-10 rule applies, is fundamentally because we as consumers hate being sold to. We hate being sold to. But for some reason, most organizations switch off the part of their brain that's a consumer and just turn on the part of the brain that thinks everyone loves being sold to. I love a sales message. Oh, give me one of those 10% discount offers. I'm going to buy everything I ever see. It just doesn't happen. It just doesn't work. What you need to do is to earn the right to pitch to your customers. You need to earn the right, the privilege for them to listen to you. If they're not listening, it doesn't matter what you say. It doesn't matter how much discount you give. Maybe a caveat on that one. It doesn't matter how wonderful your product and service are. If you haven't delivered content, if you haven't engaged with them like a human being, you haven't praised them, paid it forward, created a community built around you, leading the conversation, they're never going to listen to you. So let's go back to Susanna's at Charge Point. It's irrelevant how much you post, when you post, what type of content you post. If you haven't built that trust, they're not going to listen. You might as well not be on social media. So 90% of your effort should be on creating content that people love, that they engage with. And if that means you've got time and the effort to do one brilliant post a month, and just one post, then do one post. Don't worry about how many times a week you post. Worry about how good your content is and build up the velocity from there. The final top tip, so 70-10-10-10, the final top tip for the day is thinking about how we get more return on that one piece of content. Let's say you've got an MD or chief exec who loves to talk. I've been a chief exec and I love to talk. Put a chief exec in front of a camera and they will be there for hours. You have to slow them down, cut it down a bit. Say to your chief exec, I want your top 10 tips for whatever it is in 2022. Just do one video, just want 10 minutes of your time. I'm going to have all the camera set up and all, I'm just going to press record. And I want you to give me your top 10 tips for X and Y. They're going to love it. So he or she will sit down, you'll press record, you'll then go, thank you, and off they go. You can then take that video. Number one, you've got a video, you've got a 10-minute video, deep, rich, original content, post it to your YouTube, to your Vimeo channel. Number two, cut it down into 60-second clips, post them to Instagram. They're hooks. They are designed to hook the watcher, the listener into the big video. Take those, make them into flat images, put them on LinkedIn, put them on Twitter, take the audio from the video and put it into a podcast. Suddenly you've got a podcast episode without even really thinking about it, without even really trying. You've got a podcast episode. And we all know different people like to watch videos. Some like audio, some like to read, some like snippets, some like long form. You're helping your customer access your content in the way that they want. You can then strip the audio down again into sound bites. You can even convert the audio into text. Use something like Sonics.ai that converts audio into text. Give it a little bit of a rewrite, put some structure in there. Then you've got a blog. Post that blog to your 10 social media channels. You've got at least 40 pieces of content that can spread out over the next 2 or 3 months. Just doing one video per month with your MD, with your chief exec, with someone of interest. That one interview, that one guest, that one podcast guest that you record via Zoom can give you endless amounts of content. Now, I appreciate that's a very specific example, but it's the thinking, the idea behind it. Reuse, repurpose. It's what all the big influencers do. So Gary Vaynerchuk, who's a big marketing influencer, he does this all the time. I follow him on all his different channels, and it's the same content, but he repurposes it, he repackaged it, he strips it, he expands it. Yes, he's got a film crew following him around every day, and I know that's an advantage, but you can do something similar. And that's what the best people are doing. They're constantly thinking like, how do I engage people around the campfire? And then how do I create this production environment? And by production environment, I mean having a phone, having a phone with a camera on. That's literally what I mean. How do I get that mentality into my team, into my business, into myself? That actually makes social media interesting to do. It makes it exciting. It makes it fun. And the best companies work out how to have fun with their social media. Because if you're not having fun and if the content isn't fun and it isn't engaging, your audience just aren't going to care. And if they don't care, me, my favorite person, me, they're not going to listen. They're not going to trust you. They're not going to buy from you. Make sense? I'm conscious of time. That's about 5% of what I actually probably wanted to say today, but I think we've got the key messages that I wanted to talk about across. I'd be really, really keen if there's any feedback or any comments or any questions. I'm more than happy to debate broad topics or more specifics about your company or organization. Thank you.
I think it was really good, Phil. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
My pleasure.
I'll send the recording and well, if you're gonna send me the slides, I'll send the slides as well to the attendees.
Has Susanna got a question? Sorry, other Susanna.
No, I was just clapping.
Just a clap. Okay, thank you. There was a hand raise or a please go away or please stop question.
Yeah, thank you very much. Actually, I didn't know about that Sonics.ai.
Yeah.
I think I've used a different one. Is up to transfer the audio to text or the video to text?
There's loads of tools. I think there's video to text as well as audio to text, but I just use that one as an example because I generally strip video down to audio and then audio down to text. That's how it works for me. But I think you can do video ones as well.
Yeah, I think I've used what I use all the time, Otter.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I think it must be a similar one, right?
Yeah, definitely. Whatever, the technology just helps do the cool stuff. You know what I mean? The fun bit's actually getting the content out there and saving you hours of content creation. So.
Okay. Well, thank you very much.